Hello, everybody. Welcome to JLTY. This is a live episode of Just Listen to Yourself. I am trying something new. My social media gal, Sarah, is always telling me I need to be doing video as well as audio. And I don't usually do it because of the format of Just Listen to Yourself, which is basically just me talking. And a lot of people think that I'm very smooth with my thoughts, but I'm not. I take a lot of time to stop and go back and redo a point, or I take a lot of time to like look up things. So I that doesn't make for a really good video. But today we've got a lot to talk about because there was an election or a few elections last night. I don't know if you saw. And I wanted to break down what was going on, what I saw going on in the elections last night, and what I think it means moving forward. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and for those of you who aren't on the live stream and who are listening to this audio, thank you so much. If you are on the live stream, please go ahead and share this with people. Let folks know that we're out here, we're doing this thing, we're trying it out. Uh, Last night was crazy. There were a lot of victories and there were some tough losses as well. And we'll talk about all of that coming up. Let's get to a little bit of housekeeping. There's Kelsey in the house. Hi, Kelsey. Let's do some housekeeping. You can follow me, of course, on my locals community, davisnation.locals.com. You can sign up there and we have chats where I'm getting ready to schedule the next book club and the next Zoom. And we're going to have a lot to talk about on Zoom, and we'll get together before we throw everybody into their Thanksgiving madness. We have a good time on our Zoom calls, don't we? 'Cause we usually, I mean, always like, I'm only doing this for 30 minutes. And then like 90 minutes later, I'm like, okay, guys, we have to be quiet. We have to go. So we have a good time there. Definitely check me out there. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Real Kira Davis, and rate and review this podcast if you would on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're watching the live stream, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget that this is not my only podcast. Amelia and I have revved up a very merry podcast for the Christmas season. And we have started with some fall fare. And we're not going to really get into things until Thanksgiving. I don't start watching Hallmark 24/7 until Thanksgiving. So that's just the agreement I've come to with my family. They will not allow me to turn it on before then. So, but we did give you a little bit of harvest love, and we'll try to give you another Thanksgiving episode before we move into the Christmas season. It's going to be so much fun. So that's a very merry podcast. Please subscribe to that on iTunes and give it a like as well, and give it a rating if you would. It doesn't matter if you don't watch Hallmark movies. You'll have a great time. You'll love our most recent episode. We had a blast making it. All right, let's get into it. Let's not wait any further. What happened last night? Like many of you, I went to bed not knowing what was going to happen in the New Jersey governor's race. That was very close. As we speak now, there are still some discrepancies. There are still some votes to come in. I think there's still quite a few outstanding mail-in ballots still left to come in. But when I woke up this morning, it looked like the Democrat incumbent was going to survive. Cheaterelli, who I have to admit, I have not been paying attention to the New Jersey race because everything's been all Virginia all the time for the last couple of months. And we're going to talk about that, of course. So I haven't been paying attention until last night. But this guy, Cheaterelli, managed to flip some pretty important counties that went for Biden, but it might not be enough. And then, of course, I think Bergen County finished they had 100% of the votes in last night and found 40,000 more in the middle of the night. So we'll see how this goes. I don't know. I don't think we're done. T's Corner's in there. Hey, girl, how you doing? Thanks for showing up. Listen, this is the takeaway. Let's get right to it. This is the takeaway from last night's race in Virginia. And there were a lot of other races, and I can't get to them all. But here's the thing I want everyone to know. Last night was a sea change in America, not just because of this race in Virginia, but because this was happening all across the United States in little towns and little districts and little places you never heard of, where The AG's office was flipping red. School boards were flipping red. City council positions were flipping red. There were a couple of defund the police um, measures on some ballots, most importantly in Minneapolis, which was, that's ground zero for defund the police. Hey there, my producers in the house. Hey, Darvio. Well, Darville, you're going to be interested in this because we're talking about how the defund the police bills that were on the ballot in other places. In Minneapolis, it was defeated. That's huge. That's huge for law and order. That's huge just for common sense. I don't even want to use the term law and order because now, of course, like everything, it's a buzzword. Cleveland, where my producer is located, where FCB Radio, which hosts my podcast, is located, they had to defund the police bill on the ballot. They want to, take some funds from the police and establish a citizens commission, the usual. And unfortunately, it did pass. And they had a mayor's race, and the law and order candidate did not win. But there are some good stories to be told in that race too, from what I understand. So it wasn't like across the board. There were some losses, but I think to look at Minneapolis and to see what Minneapolis did last night, that's a big deal because this is the problem. And this is the overall problem with all of this, that the progressive left in this country is living a completely different life than the rest of us. The progressive left in this country has a completely different idea about how you provide law and order, how you provide opportunity, how you provide for equality and for the advancement of people of color, of families, of education. They have a completely different worldview. And whenever they get the chance to enact that worldview, it fails miserably every time. Please look at California. Everything we have done here is wrong. Our governor likes to go out. Every governor does this. They go out and they tout we're the fifth largest economy in the world, and we've got a budget surplus, which is a lie. We never have a budget surplus. Why do they ever raise taxes if we have a budget surplus? We never have one. They fudge the numbers. We've got like a $1 trillion unfunded like pension liability. We have no surpluses, but regardless, a lot of money does come in because California has like 44 million people here. We have a lot of people here. So we're always going to be up on that upper echelon of earnings and taxes and stuff like that. But how people are living here is fundamentally different than how the elite class on the progressive left, how they imagine we should be living. They got rid of cash bail. They got rid of the bail system and thought, well, this is going to be a great way to equalize, the criminal justice system. And crime has exploded. It's exploded across the state. It's even reaching behind the gates of these wealthy communities where I live. And when I moved here, my husband and I, we used to joke. We used to read the police blotter and we would joke and we would say, we would be like, where have we moved to? Here are the things that are in the police blotter. Kids talking loudly on Main Street at 11 p.m. Kid on a skateboard. I smelled weed. Like those were the things. And we would laugh and laugh because, of course, we came from Gary, Indiana, where like the police blotter is like 5 people murdered last night. And we thought, oh, aren't we blessed? Aren't we blessed to be able to laugh at this? But the police blotter over the last 10 years has changed, and over the last 2 years has changed dramatically. And now we're looking at break-ins. We're looking at violent crimes haven't quite reached here yet, but there have been a couple of incidences. But we're looking at petty crime going up, and that's always a bad sign. I mean, nothing good. My point is nothing good came out of this no cash bail thing. It only emboldened criminals. And now they know that they're not going to get arrested. You're not going to get arrested for a petty crime. Our sheriff here, we live in kind of a township the way it works here. Our sheriff we don't have a police force. We have the Orange County Sheriff patrols these parts. And our sheriff has said, look, we can't arrest these people really. Like we could, but they're not going to get held. We don't have a place to put them. The state's going to make us release them. The best we can do for you is move them. And we had a guy, he was like a meth head on our street. I live in this quiet, tiny little private street. And he made his way back here and was shooting up meth in the little park where our kids were playing around. The kids came home and started yelling, "Mom, mom, mom." And so we called the sheriff, and the sheriff came out, and the sheriff was like, "Look, I can't, there's nothing's going to happen to this guy. Best I can do for you is move him." And we were like, "Well, great, move him. Like, do that, do whatever you can." But you have to understand that all he's doing is moving that guy to somebody else's neighborhood, you know? And typically that neighborhood is going to be a lower income neighborhood where people don't complain as much, where people are more accustomed to this kind of stuff. We are burdening them even more. So it's not just about us. When he takes that person out, of course, I, as someone who pays an exorbitant amount of money to live in this piece, I, of course, am happy for him to move that man. I don't pay what I pay to see a guy shoot meth in front of my house. I'm not going to make any apologies. I've done my time. When you make good, go back to the hood. We did all that. But now we want some safety for our children. So I don't feel guilty about it, but I still think it's wrong. Yeah, so we're the experiment here in California, and it's a living disaster. We're being crushed under the weight. You've seen the videos of people going into stores and walking out with armfuls of product. That is real. It's not propaganda, or it's not a once in a lifetime event that someone happened to catch and now it's viral. It's every day here. Even in my suburb, people walk into the CVS and just take things and walk out. And guess what? CVS employees can't do anything. Just basically stand there. We're all working on the honor system right now. Jarvio says they don't live in the areas where they conduct their social experiments, so they never have to deal with the consequences. That's right. I think there was a politician up in Sacramento, a Republican politician, one of the few up there, who had drafted a cute little measure. It's definitely not going to pass, but I think it was more of a statement than anything. But it was a cute little measure that was like, if politicians want to put more money or take money out of this homeless fund, they have to agree to put homeless encampments near their home. So they have to agree to open, if they want to open more homeless shelters or more homeless, what do you call them? Like we call them something innocuous, like recovery centers or something. If you want to open them, then they have to open like by the mayor's house, right? Everything's going to change. I'm going to talk about this too. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff. So we're seeing the results of progressive leftist policy in real time. And guess what? Americans don't like it. People see the progressive left. I'm using progressive left because I have liberals that listen to this show and watch me on TV. And if you're a liberal who's listening to the likes of me, then you already get it, right? You already have an open mind. Maybe you're Republican, you're never going to be conservative, but you're not a progressive leftist. That's where the cancer is, on that alt left side. And they're the loudest ones right now. They're the squeakiest wheels right now. So they're getting all the attention. And the Democrat Party has made the mistake, the deep mistake of deciding that the progressive leftists are the ones who are really in charge, and they're the ones who are going to sway elections. And in some of the places, the usual suspects are saying the usual things. And yes, you go into some inner cities and there's just like a stranglehold on the vote there. But last night we saw that is not a given. And the Democrats have really overplayed their hands. We were suspecting this. We hoped that the California recall would be sort of the bellwether, but it wasn't for a lot of reasons. And I don't think one of those reasons was cheating, but it wasn't. But now that I see what happened in Virginia, I think that the recall was a bellwether of sorts, because the fact that the recall even made it to a ballot was a huge victory. It was only the second one to make it to a ballot. And here we go. When When did the recall turn around? The recall turned around as soon as the governor told parents they weren't allowed to send their kids to school. The recall turned around as soon as the governor told working moms and dads that they had to shut down their businesses, that the thing that feeds their family was not essential. That's when the recall signatures started to tick up. That's saying something. Maybe we didn't have enough time to really do the legwork and convince people, which was one of the strategies of Newsom, but it was the parents that activated this. I'll never forget the day that I was at an event, a church event, and we were meeting secretly. We weren't supposed to be meeting because COVID, but we were meeting anyway as a group. And my friend said, we had just heard that schools weren't going to be opening for 2020. And my friend said, when I heard that on the radio, I got in my car. I Googled where the nearest petition was, and I went to sign it. And that's it, because I'm sick of this shit. That's what he said. Those were his words. And I think there are a lot of people out there like that. And we saw this in Virginia. Let's go to Virginia. Let's break down what happened in Virginia last night. First of all, I want people to know, I want people to think about this. It was still close. Youngkin won, and it was a great victory. And it's something that we need to really hold on to and think about and analyze. And that's what we're doing today. But don't get cocky, because it was close, to my mind, too close. People should be outraged. People should be outraged. It should have been, it should have been 80% for Youngkin, but he barely crossed that 50% threshold. Now, in politics, it doesn't matter. Once you win, and no one cares the margin that you win by, except the political wonks. So that's fine. He's won, but it still was close. But what happened? When did that race change? Did the race change when Trump said something? Did the race change when Democrats started arguing over this $3 trillion spending bill? Did the race change when Joe Biden said he was going to issue executive order vaccine mandates into existence? Did the race change when people realized their gas was going up? The race may have experienced a little bit of shift, but no. The race changed when Terry McAuliffe opened his mouth to say, I do not believe parents should have input into what their children are learning in school. And if you want to piss somebody off, you get in between a mom and her kid. And this is the lesson we can learn from last night. Youngkin came from 22 points behind in a matter of weeks to win that. That is amazing. And you could see it written on Terry McAuliffe's face when he came out last night to do his non-concession speech. He did the Hillary thing, right? Where, he came out and was like, oh, we're still counting. We're still fighting. He did his little goofy dance. I was watching his kids when he did that, and I could see one of the older daughters. She's an adult, but I could see her like kind of muttering. You know how you do, like you smile, but you're muttering behind your teeth. I could see her look at her other sibling, kind of roll her eyes and go, no, don't do that, Dad. That's not a good idea. McAuliffe knew it when he came out that he had lost, but it wasn't just that he had lost. He had blown it. And I think as we analyze this further, we're going to see that Terry McAuliffe probably committed one of the greatest political blunders in history. And if Republicans are smart, the takeaway from this will be for them, do not ignore parents. And guess what? Both parties have been ignoring parents for far too long. Go back and listen to my episode of JLTY on school choice. Go back and listen to that. I have been beating the school choice drum for 15, almost 20 years. Because I knew, as a Black mother who was serving in the Black community, who was serving Black students, that was an issue that turned me into a conservative. I saw that Black parents are desperate. And you know what? white elitists look at us like we're too stupid to care about our kids. They look at our inner city communities and they see a lot of drama, right? They see a lot of crime. They see a lot of single parenthood. And yeah, we're struggling. We get it. But just because you are on welfare and maybe have a couple babies by a couple of different guys doesn't mean that you love your kids any less than that white mom in the suburbs who gets to be a stay-at-home mom and has a man who goes to a corporate job every day. Guess what? All those people love their kids just the same. But there is an attitude among the elites in this country, on the left and the right, that somehow the rest of us don't feel the same things for our children. They go into the hood and they look at those moms and dads and they go, well, they actually aren't intelligent enough to love their children the way that I love my kids. And don't think that that's just a platitude. I've heard it with my own ears over the years in the school choice movement. There was a woman in Minneapolis years ago now. I'd have to go and find this video, but it's out there. She was the president of of a local school board, and somebody challenged her on school choice. And they were in a school board meeting, and she said out loud, this is an older white lady, and she said, well, the reason why we don't let parents choose what school their kids go to is because for a lot of parents don't know how to make the right choices for their children. And that's what McAuliffe was saying. And that's grossly offensive. Guess what? It's grossly offensive to, quote, people of color. We love our kids just as much as anyone else. And the idea that we don't want good education for our children, the idea that we just are going to keep on trusting the education of our children to other people who actually have no care for where our kids go or what we do. No, that it can't be tolerated anymore. And last night that was a message. Because look, Youngkin didn't just go get the typical Republican areas. He flipped several counties that went for Biden. One district he flipped was almost an exclusively Black district, went for Youngkin. Why? Because Black people aren't morons. And I wish more politicians would get this. We're not morons. And I follow a lot of liberals on Twitter. And I was going down Black liberals on Twitter, and I was going down that list. I was going through their comments last night, and guess what? It was a lot of Black people going, you know what? We're sick of the Democrats depending on us to come save their asses. What is in it for us? We look around and we have none of the things that we want. I think that realization is a little late, but better late than never. And some of them want things I don't want, right? Like some of them want that spending bill to be passed. Some of them want rent control. Some of them want some very socialist agenda items. But the point is that they know they're not being listened to. They know they're not being heard. They're just being used. And the GOP does it too. As I started this rant, what was I saying? For 20 years almost, I've been a school choice advocate. And I've been begging Republicans to take up this issue because when I go into the Black neighborhoods, when I talk to other Black parents, guess what they want? They want educational choice. They don't like having to be dependent on bureaucrats who know nothing about their children and what their children need. They're not dumb. They're not idiots. Maybe they're disadvantaged. Maybe they've made some bad choices. Maybe they've lived in an oppressive type of life where they haven't been able to excel, but they're not so dumb as to believe that the education of their children doesn't matter and that if they had a choice, most of them would take their children elsewhere besides their local public schools. Every time that choice is presented to a largely Black community, they overwhelmingly choose choice. This is an issue Republicans should have been running on the whole time. Guess what? Guess who ran on it? Trump. Trump ran on school choice. And guess what? It was a game changer. Guess who else ran on it? DeSantis. I know Trump lost in 2020. I know Trump lost, air quotes, in 2020. but in 2016, he was running on school choice. And even in 2016, after that electoral sweep, People like me were begging the GOP, please take up the school choice issue. It's resonating. People love it. It makes sense. GOP's always dragging their feet on it because they don't want to piss off the teachers' unions. But guess who else won? DeSantis. DeSantis won, I think something like 30%, 33% of the black vote in Florida. No Florida governor has ever done that. He won over a black man, a black Democrat. He won on the issue of school choice, letting parents choose which schools are best for their children. And guess what the Republicans have done? They've still ignored us. They've still ignored the issue. They're still pretending that the issue is racial divides or law and order. These are things that are important to people. I'm not saying they're not important, but they're still pretending like school choice is just a niche issue. It is not, and especially not now, not today. Rachel D has a great comment in the chat room right now. She says, the reason we learn is the great channel for more on getting your kids out of school and holding school boards accountable. Thank you for that, Rachel. The reason we learn. Okay. I like that. Kelsey asks, can Youngkin and Sears deliver for the Black community and change the game? Virginia, they had the messaging. Now they have to go implement the agenda. Well, that's a very interesting question, Kelsey, because what happened also was that the Republicans picked up some more seats in the Virginia House. Do they call it that? They don't call it a house in Virginia. They call it I don't know what, it's not the Senate. It's whatever, the Virginia lawmaking place. So I think Republicans came from behind, flipped a few seats, and now they're like +3. So they had the thing is, a governor can say what he wants, but at the end of the day, you've got to have the legislature behind you. And so you can say all you want, but here's the other thing, like a lot of governors are coming in and they don't have the legislature behind them, so they're using executive orders. Thank you, Susie Moore. House of Delegates. Thank you. I liked my technical term better, which is the lawmaking place. But sure, if you want to use that, that's fine. But yeah, so a lot of Democrats are just appointees, period, are going into office and going, well, I don't have the legislature behind me, so I'm going to executive order my way. I am loath to depend on these executive orders. Yes, do I want a Republican governor or president to come in and reverse all the BS? Yeah, I do. But at the same time, it's getting scary how much we're leaning on executive orders. I mean, you look at everything that Biden's doing. Our system is not designed for this. It's not designed to work this way, and it's going to only result in chaos and fear. And so I don't want a Republican to come in and executive order his way out of everything. I don't want that. So I'm glad he's going to have a legislature behind him. He's got the wonderful Winsome Sears, who I did not know about. Why did I not know about her? I should have known about her. I just was focused on so many other things. I wasn't even looking. I know some people had told me, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But last night, I really went and looked into her. I'm like, wow, this woman is something else. She's a phenomenon. That's fantastic. So maybe with that ticket, will they be able to reach this agenda? Well, they're going to have to sell it. And here's the thing. Youngkin's going to have to keep selling. But the way he started last night gives me hope. That speech was great. Guess what that speech didn't mention last night in his victory speech? Didn't mention CRT. It didn't mention CRT. He talked about education. He talked about choice. He talked about empowering parents. But he didn't get into the weeds on critical race theory and race relations. He knew what was important. What people voted for in Virginia was parent respect. The GOP has left us behind. Sorry, guys, you have. That's why I can't call myself a Republican. I'm a conservative, but I can't call myself a Republican. As a Black parent, I have been telling you, begging you for years to get on this school choice issue because it crosses all boundaries. Everybody can get on board with the school choice issue, except the teachers' unions for obvious reasons. I think it's a message that can win, Kelsey, to finish answering your question. I think they can bring this to fruition. We've seen DeSantis do this in Florida. I think they have the mandate. I think that Youngkin has the intention. I do. From everything I've seen from him, he seems absolutely sincere, and he's going to have everything working against him. But I think if he can go out and continue to message, he's going to have to continue selling this to people. He's going to have to continue selling this to the people of Virginia. But I do believe that he can do this. Here's the other thing that Republicans and Democrats need to know. Culture matters. Culture matters. I know a lot of Republicans and conservatives who say, well, we should be in on this on the fiscal stuff. We should be in on this on the legislative stuff, the judicial branch stuff. But when it comes to social issues, when it comes to culture, we really should lay off, because that's not the direction that America's going in, and it turns people off. Well, how come the Democrats and progressive left can run on social issues all day long? All they're doing is running on social issues. All they're doing is running on the culture. That's what they're doing. They are running on the culture. It's not like they're, oh, we just want to do fiscal issues. We just want to make sure that there's more money throwing. That's not what's happening on the left. That's not what's happening on the left. They're the ones that are pushing to change the Constitution for, okay, gay marriage. They got that. They're the ones that are pushing to lock parents out of education. They're the ones that are pushing to change the law so that boys can go into the bathroom with your little girls. They're the ones that are pushing for abortion. Abortion is a social issue. How come you don't consider it a social issue if a Democrat pushes pro-choice laws, but it's a social issue if a Republican pushes pro-life laws? It's so ignorant. It's so naive. We are in the culture war. Everybody wake up. You don't get to separate yourself from it just because you think you're above it. That's not what's happening on the left. If the right can't respond to it, they're dead in the water. And that's what Youngkin did. He took advantage of a grave error by Terry McAuliffe, and he realized that what he was looking at was the culture of parenting, the culture of family at work. And sure, families look all kinds of ways these days, but we all love our kids. The far left is engaging in a culture war. If the right doesn't get into it, you're dead in the water. So yeah, it does matter to parents. Let me read this tweet from Chris Hayes from MSNBC, which I watched last night, and they were absolutely apoplectic on MSNBC. They couldn't pull it together. They couldn't believe what they were watching happening. Even the Jersey race, which looks like it's probably going to end up in the blue, even still, they were like very distressed that it was moving that way. And then in New York, like in Long Island, I think all of their AG offices that were on the ballot flipped red. I think some city council seats flipped red. A lot of New York flipped red last night, and they were not happy. Here's what Chris said. This got under my skin. He said, it's been interesting how much education and schools as a focus of right-wing grievance. First of all, let me keep reading. It's been interesting how much education and schools as a focus of right-wing grievance has been consistent, even as a particular grievance keeps shifting. A year ago, it was going to be all about how schools were still closed. Then they open, and it's both masks and CRT. First of all, a concern is not a grievance, Chris. Okay, we're not like some whiny people out here going, "Oh, no one wants to pay attention to us." It's not a freaking grievance. It's a complaint. You guys aren't cutting it. Listen to us. This is part of the problem. Democrats, this is part of the problem. You didn't hear us. You didn't hear your own people. Your own people, your own voters were out there going, hey, I want these schools open. Hey, I am not comfortable with this curriculum. Hey, I would like a little more choice. If you're going to close my kid's school down, I'd like some other options, please. And and they're met with, you're a white supremacist. Hello? Those are your people. Those people don't belong to the right. You shot down your own people by telling them they were worthless and pointless and white supremacists, which is the worst thing you can call someone these days, because they didn't toe the line, because they had a complaint, They had a customer complaint about what you were doing. So that's your fault. That's on y'all. That's not on us. But here's the other thing, Chris. It's not a shifting thing. It's not like it's not the right wing. It's all of us. It's all parents. And it's not like we're like, okay, we're going to complain about schools being closed. Oh shoot, they opened it. They opened the schools. What should we complain about now? Masks, CRT. No, that's not what happened, Chris. What happened was you guys shut down the school for a year. We had to stay home with our kids and watch what they were doing on Zoom, and it scared the hell out of us. Suddenly, we were all in the classroom with our kids, which is something we hadn't been doing before. Y'all did this. Randy Weingarten did this. This isn't an issue of we're somebody shouting squirrel and we're chasing different things. CRT and mask issues came up because we were sitting at home for a year watching the BS that you guys were trying to teach our kids. And then those of us who wanted to be on your side, right? Who are on the left, who are pro-union, who are pro-public school, those of us who wanted to be, but had questions maybe about the viability and the necessity of masks, and had questions about, you have to understand, a lot of elitists are anti-vax. A lot of wealthy people, wealthy white people, don't vaccinate their kids at all for anything. And these are your supporters. And now you're telling them they've got to get this new vaccine that really has a lot of testing to do still for their kids. They were concerned. And so when they came to you, Chris, you, the royal you, as represented in the Democrat Party, and said, hey, we're concerned that our child's learning is going to be inhibited by the use of masks. We've looked at the science. We see they're not really at risk. We see they're not super spreaders like we thought they were in the beginning. And we don't want these vaccine mandates. You labeled them white supremacists. What did you think? Is that a winning strategy, Chris? No. What did that do? That made parents start looking harder at the system. And when they started looking at the mechanics of the system, they started looking at how all those gears turn. They saw that it was bullshit. That's what they saw, and they didn't like it. And then they didn't like that you, Chris, the Chris Hayeses of the world, dismissed them as supremacists. And instead, you guys doubled down on that rhetoric. Van Jones had it right last night. Van Jones said, who is not a stupid man, he's just a Democrat. Van Jones said, I think we're coming off as annoying. Cue Kamala Harris campaigning for Terry McAuliffe. I'm in favor of sending Cammie out to campaign for everybody going into 2022. Go for it, girl. You're really good at it. It's just we weren't. Randy Weingarten, she's a moron. I'll say that. She's a heartless moron. She has sold out. And she's done more for the school choice movement than I think anybody has in the last 20 years, to be honest. And you see her scrambling today. She's out there going, oh, no. We were on the side of opening schools. Oh, yeah, Randy, y'all went to the CDC and sat down with the CDC to form their mask policy and their reopening policy. You are not on our side. You are not on the side of our children. That's what happened in Virginia last night. Parents spoke up, and this is the way to win. By the way, the other takeaway from this is that there's no area that is unwinnable. Please stop telling me that California is lost forever. Virginia just turned red. Virginia just turned red a year after they booted President Trump and moved in for Biden in big numbers. Virginia that houses almost all of our federal government workers. Virginia. So don't tell me that California is lost. Show up. Government goes to those who show up. And guess what Youngkin did? He showed up. He showed up in places he didn't belong. He showed up in Black neighborhoods. He showed up in poor neighborhoods. He showed up at meetings. He showed up at festivals. Anywhere he could go, he showed up. One of the representatives from the Mama Bear movement group, uh, Asra Normandi. She's amazing. Fox is interviewing her last night, and she said, she's a Democrat. She's like, I'm a faithful Democrat, but I voted for Youngkin because guess what? When we were asking McAuliffe to come meet with us so that he could hear our concerns as parents, he told us he would charge us $20,000. He told us the cost for him to come speak to us is $20,000. When we asked Youngkin, he came for free. She's like, that's when I knew who was serious. Here's another thing we learned last night. Trump is not on the ticket. I do hope Democrats run with this strategy, though, because it's a losing one. Trump is not on the ticket. You spent the last year and a half trying to erase, cancel, insult, basically just destroy anybody who had even a faint support for Donald Trump. You told us all that we were the problem. You're still telling us that, that we're the problem. Anybody who voted for Trump is a white supremacist. Trump is the kiss of death. You took away all his accounts. You tried to erase him from social media. And in the end, what you ended up hurting yourselves, because then the rest of us were going, well, Trump's not on the ticket. Trump can't even come out and campaign for anybody. He doesn't even have social media. He can't even be tweeting late at night. So we're just going to have to move on without him. So that's what we did. And then the left was like, oh, no, we can't move on without Trump. Wait, we didn't mean that. Kelsey says, I think Trump being off social media is a huge help for Republican candidates. I think so, too, because it just didn't give. I think the left overplayed their hand there. I wish Trump was on social media. It's not right that his accounts were taken away like that. He is a president. But in the end, it ended up biting them in the butt because he can't go out there saying foolish things and giving them something to just put on. Look what the Lincoln Project did. Look at their big strategy. Their big strategy was to dress up, was to cosplay neo-Nazis and stand in front of Youngkin's bus. They're still running Trump on the ticket. The Lincoln Project, if you go to their website, it says we're fighting Trumpism. They don't claim to be Republicans anymore. And I think they're just hoping no one's going to notice that they're not Republicans anymore. They don't claim to be Republicans on their site, but they do say that they're anti-Trump. And I'm like, well, what happens to their mission when Trump is just gone? What if Trump dies? Or in a couple of years, he'll just be a memory like Obama was, and he'll give speeches and maybe come out and campaign every now and then. Who are they then? In order for the Lincoln Project to be anybody, they have to always keep Trump on the ticket. So that's their strategy now, is to have Trump on the ticket. But guess what? He wasn't on the ticket. Nobody voted for Donald Trump last night. He was on no ticket. People vote, and Youngkin played it smooth. He reminded me of Kevin Kiley, who ran for governor here, and I hope he's going to run again in California. But a lot of people tried to connect him to Trump because he's a Republican. And every time a liberal outlet, which every outlet in California is liberal, every time he got asked a question about Trump, he would say, I'm not worried about Donald Trump. I'm worried about the people of California. He is not on the ticket. He has nothing to do with whether or not parents can send their kids to school, or whether or not they can keep their businesses open, or whether they can put gas in their car. He is not the president, and he's not running in California. I think that's the best answer moving forward. Not because you need to be ashamed of Donald Trump. I don't think you do need to. He is who he is. He was what he was, and I'm glad he was our president for 4 years. I'll say that again. I'm glad he was our president. I wish he was our president for 8. But guess what? He ain't president no more. So we all got to move on. And the left has been telling us that. The left has been forcing us to move on. And then when we move on, they want to be like, no, you guys still have Trump. What about Trump? Trump. Trump wasn't on the ticket last night. Parents were. Children were. Families were. And they won. And that's how Youngkin got out from under that. Another lesson from last night. Listen to us. The left wants to be out there. All the punditry. I watched MSNBC exclusively last night. I flipped it to Fox once in a while. Like, if I want to hear something about Winsome Sears, I had to go to Fox, right? Because MSNBC was not even acknowledging her existence until a couple of us started tweeting at them about it. And then later on in the evening, they acknowledged it. Let me answer this question. Do you think Trump should run in 2024? No, I don't. I wish he had won this year and then we could have moved on to more drama the next time. But no, I think this is the thing. I think Trump is over. I think it was what it was. I would love to see Trump go and start a media empire because the media was his biggest problem. And I would love for him to I would just love for him to be a disruptor. You know, I would love that. I don't think he should run again. I think we've been there, done that. And were he to be the nominee, for some reason, I wouldn't have a problem voting for him, but I have no desire to see him on the ticket. But yes, like some of you in the chat room are saying, I do believe he started a movement. I do believe that he disrupted things enough to where even what happened to him in 2020, whether if you think it was fair or if you think it wasn't fair, like it started a conversation. All of a sudden, we're all needing to be way more engaged, right? These are all the Democrats overplaying their hand. They thought we were still going to be asleep, that we weren't going to be worried about what happened in 2020. All the pushback they gave about people who wanted audits. Well, guess what? That woke up all the Democrats too, who just believed. Now Democrat supporters are going, well, I'm going to prove to you that there's no election fraud. I'm going to really dig into these facts and figures. And when you start digging, you start realizing, oh, there's a lot here we never knew. There's a lot of Republicans who woke up, conservatives who woke up and decided to run for office. I've been saying it forever. That's what we need, right? We need you guys to go run for office. Let me tell you this. Some interesting things happened. In Connecticut, there's a place called Guilford, and they had a CRT on the ballot they had this big school board election, and the Democrats won the entire thing. You thought that was going to be like Republicans won. No, Democrats won the entire thing. But I went to look up the town because I was like, all the people on the school board are white. This is in like coastal Connecticut. I bet this is like a hoity-toity town. And so I went in there, and sure enough, it's like a very expensive, exclusive small town. They don't have a lot of diversity there, and yet they're arguing over this CRT thing. So I think this is manufactured by the elites. I think what we're looking at here, and I'm starting to close this out. I think what we're looking at here is not a divide between black and white. And it's not a divide between left and right. This is a divide between the haves and the have-nots. This is a divide between the elites and the rest of us. Because this past year, the elites, their kids still got to do everything. Last year, when schools were closed, their kids still went to private school. Terry McAuliffe's kids, he has 4 kids, they all were raised in private schools. And yet he ran on a platform of closing the option of private schooling for parents who couldn't afford it otherwise. I look at the makeup of that board, that Connecticut board, and I think, yeah, that these are the elitists who will never have to pay the price really for these policies in their own neighborhoods, right? Because they make enough money to live above it all. The people who want to defund the police. It's not the people that live in the neighborhoods, you guys. It's not those people. If you've ever lived in a high crime neighborhood, you want the police. You don't want fewer police. I lived in Gary where our police department, we'd have a neighborhood meeting with like a representative once a year. And every year the guy who come in would go, look, if you call after 11 p.m., there's 1 officer per 100,000, or there's 2 officers and 1 patrol car. So I guess that would make 3 officers per 100,000 people. Gary at that time had like a population of 102,000. So he's like, after 11 p.m., we have to prioritize. We were never going, I wish there were fewer police. And we did have police violence and brutality issues in the community and corrupt issues, not just with white officers, not at all. Plenty of the black officers were just as corrupt. We did. And, but never once did anybody go, I wish we had fewer police officers in Gary. That's what we need. That'll help. I never met a person. I never met one damn person who ever said that. So it's not the people in the communities living the reality. I do believe this is elitist. This is an elitist issue. It's the same thing that this happened in Cleveland. My producer Darvio was pretty much beside himself last night because that issue 24, which was a defund the police issue, it won. That's unfortunate. And then the law and order candidate for mayor, he lost to the defund the police mayor. But he said when we went in and dug into the numbers, what we saw was that the law and order Republican had actually made significant gains in the black districts. He had hoped to win up to 30%. He got closer to 50%. It was the white suburban voters that were voting defund the police. So this isn't an issue just of I don't believe this is an issue of race. This is an issue of class and elites versus the rest of us. We're living totally different lives. It's not about CRT. Listen to us. Van Jones and all these other people want to be out there and they want to be like, they've weaponized race. They've weaponized CRT. They don't even know what CRT is. We know what CRT is. We know that it doesn't come in a textbook. See, they think you're dumb. They think you're an idiot. And that's what parents are responding to. We know CRT is not in a textbook. Critical race theory is just that. It is a theory. It is a philosophy. It's not something that is written down somewhere in a public. There's critical legal studies. That's, written somewhere, and college students teach that. But it's so condescending that there's no such thing as CRT in schools. It's already in the schools. It's up here in your head. It's in here in your heart. It's the way that you teach equity. It's the way that you relate to your students and ask them to relate to each other. Just because you can't see it written down on a piece of paper doesn't mean it hasn't infected your classroom. That is what was so infuriating to me and condescending to me last night watching these people. It's not about CRT. It's CRT, but it's not about CRT. It's about everything. It's about the fact that you guys aren't listening to parents when they come to you and say, we're having problems. Please represent us. You are not the authority. You are the representatives. They have forgotten. So a lot of school board positions flipped last night too. By the way, quite a few across the country in local districts. So I'm starting to see y'all get involved and get in there and get your hands dirty and running for offices. And that's great. Like, keep doing it. That's what's going to win moving forward. Did you hear about this kid in New Jersey? I haven't been able to find much about him. His name is Nicholas Seppi in New Jersey. He won his school board race. Nicholas is 19 years old. He was a 2020 graduate. He lost his senior year to the bureaucrats, just like my son did. And he said, I'm going to run for school board. I'm going to run one of these people out of here. Ran all Democrats on the school board. He tossed one out. 19-year-old kid on the school board. Nicholas Seppi is his name, Seppy. Need to repeat that victory over and over. Listen, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't care if you're right or left. What I do care about is if you care about common sense and the right for every American to have their say, but particularly the right of parents to have their say. I am telling you, people, school choice could be the defining issue for 2022 and 2024. And if DeSantis decides to run, it will be, because that's what propelled him to victory in Florida. And we need to be pressing the GOP to be listening to us. They weren't listening to us. I've been telling them for 20 years as a Black constituent, as a Black conservative, this is a winning issue. but they don't want me to come and to their conferences and talk to them about school choice. They want me to come to their conferences and talk to them about how racist Democrats are and how Republicans aren't really racist and how Black people are really conservative and we should vote Republican. That's what they want to hear from me. That's the only thing they want to hear coming out of my mouth. I don't care about that stuff. I don't care if Democrats are really racist or Republicans are really racist. Guess what? Racists are on all sides of the spectrum. I've met them on the left and I've met them on the right. I do not care. They don't represent me. We're not the same people. We don't have the same hopes and dreams. I don't care about them. I do not need to tie my legacy to any to racism. What I want to talk to you about is justice. What I want to talk to you about is how most Black parents live conservative lives and want to live conservative lives and want their children to live conservative lives. And how are you going to help them do that? By telling them that they need to stop complaining about racism and there's no such thing as racism? Do you think that's a winning message in the Black community? No. Democrats telling parents that there's no such thing as CRT and that they have nothing to complain about when it comes to school didn't work for them. And Republicans telling Black parents that there's no racism and they don't need to worry about discrimination is not working for them either. You know what is working? Parental rights. And people are furious right now. So get on board. I don't care if you're left or right, Democrat or Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat and you have always thought that voting for a Republican was going to make you some kind of white supremacist. Get over it and get in this game. Be a disruptor. Take one for the team. You know what I'm saying? Just take one for the team. Republicans do it all the time. They punish Republican legislators all the time. That's how we get majority Democrat Congress. Because Republican voters just go, oh, you guys, you didn't, the Republicans had the chance to repeal Obamacare, didn't do it. They paid for that. Make your politicians pay. You don't have to always vote Republican, but make them pay in some kind of way. Otherwise, this never changes. I don't know what's going to happen moving forward. I think Democrats are not going to learn their lesson from what happened last night. I think they're going to double down on the rhetoric. I think they're going to really push hard to get this bill, this spending bill passed so that they can tout that. And maybe, money always talks. So maybe that will help. But I think that this is the GOP's to lose moving forward. But more important than that, I don't want you to look at this as a GOP versus Dem issue. I want you to look at this as a pro-child issue, a pro-parent issue. And we're sick of being told that we don't know what's good for our families. We're over COVID. We're over it. Sure, there are still the religious nuts out there who have now made COVID their religion, and masks are, their rosaries. And I mean, those people are out there. Those people would fall for anything. But they're not most of us. Most of us are over it. We're over it. Democrats keep trying to tell us we're not over it. We're over it. We're done with the threat of schools being closed, held over our heads. We're done with it. We're over it. We're done with schools trying to teach our kids social values instead of teaching our kids how to read and write. We're over it. We're done. And we're done with all being labeled white supremacists, no matter what our color or our voting preferences or our party preferences, all being labeled white supremacists for daring to say, I don't agree with you. We're over it. And Virginia was just the start. You mark my words. You don't even have to mark my words. You take a look at the electoral map across the nation last night and you see what happened almost everywhere. It was a red wave. And Democrats are on the ropes now. Again, Democrat voters, you don't have to become a Republican. But consider taking one for the team to punish these people who take us for granted. That's why I'll never be a Democrat again. Because I woke up, I realized that the Democrats don't give a rip about my vote. They don't care what I think. I'm working in the and I'm trying to tell people, hey, our kids need school choice. Oh, what are you, some kind of conservative Republican? No. What? Me? No. What are you talking about? I was raised a socialist, an atheist socialist. Like, no way. But it didn't matter. My voice didn't matter. And the voices of my kids that I was advocating for didn't matter to them. And that's when I knew they only use us. They come around every 4 years and they give us all these platitudes how the Republicans are going to do this to us and do that to us. And you never do anything for us. You see how we're living in here and you just walk away every 4 years. So I'm over that. I'll never vote Democrat again. But if you want to, be my guest, but consider being a disruptor. Let's make 2022 a disruptive year. Let's make this the year that we make school choice the norm. Let's do that because that's going to change this country dramatically, which is why so many people are against it. All right, I'm going to go. Thank you for tuning in. You guys, thanks for tuning into the live stream, an hour. Okay, this has been an experiment. I'm going to rip this to audio, and it is going to go up as a regular audio podcast this week. So if you want to head over to Just Listen to Yourself and subscribe over there, you can. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm not a big video person, but I know sometimes it helps to see. And I am not really good at doing a structured, this was more like a rant, but when I have something that's like high information where I've got a lot of studying that I've done, it's really hard for me to do like a live stream like this, but I thought this might be a good subject to experiment with. So thanks for tuning in, and make sure you subscribe to Just Listen to Yourself wherever you find your podcast, and please rate and review. I'm trying to get to 1,000. I'm at 668 right now. So I got a ways to go, but you guys, come on. We show we can win Virginia. I can win the comment section in iTunes. Help me out there. Don't forget that A Very Merry Podcast has started back up for the season. Amelia and I will be doing stuff over there. And follow me at Red State. I'll be dropping a column over there today. And don't forget that we have a lot of fun over at davisnation.locals.com. Join us over there for daily chats and book club and Zoom. You can talk to me personally on Zoom. Yeah, all that stuff. All right. Thanks, guys. Hey, remember, until we talk again, just remember, every once in a while, just take a second and stop and just listen to yourself. Peace out.